This is my presentation about the consumption and production problem for LME 448. Section 1. Explore the consumption and production problem. What is responsible consumption and production? Consumption and production rest on the use of natural resources, which would be okay, but is having destructive impacts on our planet. Responsible consumption and production is about doing more with less. The focus is to decouple economic growth from environmental degradation, increase resource efficiency, and promote sustainable lifestyles. What is the problem? By 2050, the global population could reach 9.6 billion people, as estimated by the United Nations. The equivalent of almost 3 planets would be required to provide the natural resources necessary to sustain current lifestyles. An estimated 1/3 of all food produced each year rots in the waste cans of consumers, or spoils due to poor harvest practices or transportation. This is equivalent to 1.3 billion tons worth of food and around $1 trillion. Only 3% of the world's water is fresh, of which 2.5% is frozen in the Antarctica glaciers, leaving only 0.5% for our freshwater needs. Man is polluting and using this water faster than nature can replenish it. More information about the problem is that the global material footprint has increased 70% since 2000. Households are responsible for consuming 29% of global energy. 2.01 billion metric tons of municipal solid waste are produced annually worldwide and continues to increase. This graph shows the per capita greenhouse gas emissions by country in 2000. We can see that the developed countries are contributing to greenhouse gas emissions more than developing countries, with the U.S. being one of the top leaders in greenhouse gas emissions. If change is going to take place, it needs to start in the developed countries. This graph shows the environmental impacts of food and agriculture. 26% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from food and agriculture. 50% of global habitable land is used by food and agriculture. It's using 70% of global fresh water. It contributes 78% to global ocean and freshwater pollution. Livestock accounts for 94% of mammal biomass, excluding humans. This graph shows the municipal solid waste generation rates from 1960 to 2017. As you can see, waste has continued to increase throughout time, but appears to be leveling off. Consumption is on the rise. This graph shows that money spent by consumers has continued to increase since the 1960s. This affects the environment because the more that the appetite of the consumer grows, the natural systems that we depend on continue to be undermined. Americans consume far more natural resources and live less sustainably than people from any other large country of the world, shown in the graph by our large carbon footprint. It is said that the average American will drain as many resources as 35 natives of India and consume 53 times more goods and services than someone from China. National Geographic Screendex found that American consumers rank last of 17 countries surveyed in regard to sustainable behavior. This is the mind map I created to show the ways that we can be responsible consumers. You can see that ways that we can make a difference are through reducing our plastic use, reducing electricity, being water-wise, reusing, making our own products, making smart food choices, and recycling. Section 2. Understand and interpret the consumption and production problem.
Circumstances.
This is a compilation of TED Talks concerning the problem with consumption and production and making our practices more responsible. This video is available to watch on my website, but for the sake of time, I will not play it right now. I gave a survey to the public on consumption and production and received 25 responses. I have several demographics displayed here, including age group, education level, household yearly income, and employment. You can see that it had a wide variety of respondents for age group, education level, and household yearly income, although a majority of my respondents were employed. These are a few questions that I asked in my survey. Do you think there's a problem with the way that we consume and produce? 92% thought yes. Did you know that if our population continues to increase at the current rate, by the year 2050 we would need the equivalent of 3 planets to provide the natural resources to sustain our current lifestyles? 76 of the respondents did not know that. Which of the following do you think are the 3 most critical factors in the problem of consumption and production? Majority of respondents thought food loss and waste were. Which of the following do you think is contributing the most to CO2 emissions? Many answered transportation and factories. However, few answered food production, although it plays a very large role. What are reasonable practices that you could incorporate into your lifestyle to reduce your ecological footprint? Many answered avoiding single-use bottles, choosing biodegradable packaging, and switching to energy-efficient light bulbs. I was surprised by how few would buy organic. Maybe it's due to lack of awareness of the nature of organic food. Many people felt that their practices were at least somewhat making a difference in the environment. 92% feel that there's a problem with the way that we consume and produce. 76% thought food loss and waste was a critical factor in the consumption and production problem. 100% felt they could make more than one change in their life to reduce their ecological footprint. 72% felt their practices were making somewhat of a difference or higher on the environment. Section 3. Brainstorm advocacy strategies for consumption and production. My first idea was to create an organized advocacy where I could explain sustainable agriculture and the processes Congress could put into place to save our environment. This e-magazine provides more sustainable practices that we put into place and the explanation of these practices. This is an infographic I created to show 7 ways that individuals could make a difference and be an advocate for responsible food production. You can buy organic, support local farmers, grow your own, reduce meat in your diet, reduce food waste, avoid harsh chemicals, and spread the word. Section 4. Develop advocacy strategy for responsible consumption and production. When developing my advocacy plan, I wanted to focus on knowledge because knowledge is the root of change. I wanted to educate the public to understand that changes in their life can help to sustain the environment for future generations. I decided to write a letter to Congress to encourage them to promote awareness of the problem and inform the public about a difference they can make. My advocacy project is a letter to encourage members of Congress to promote awareness of the consumption and production problem, as well as informing the public of changes they can make in their lives. This letter will be sent to government members on the local, state, and national levels. Section 5. Test advocacy strategy for responsible consumption and production. I tested the letter by sending an email to local groups and companies, peers, teachers, and professors. The email included an explanation of the project, the goal of the letter, an attachment of the letter, and a Google form that respondents could complete to give feedback or constructive criticism about the letter. Responses came from 2 professors and 1 teacher. All respondents felt that there was nothing to be added to the letter or improvements to make. Here, I included the responses to the Google Forms survey. However, the feedback was all positive and they did not think any changes needed to be made. There was 1 error in my Google form that I fixed, and they thought that I needed to address my email to an actual person, which I was planning on doing, just I didn't do it for the sake of name confidentiality. And this concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?